Typically, marketing and sales are handled by a company's marketing and sales team, who, not surprisingly, approach the task using the standard marketing and sales tools. But what if we could uncover hidden opportunities or boost our success rate by taking an entirely different approach? Our guest today will be talking about why we might want to solve marketing and sales challenges like an engineer, and how he has used this strategy in his company. I'm Jane Singer, and it's great to have you with us here on A Seat at the Table. Today we have Timothy Partasevitch, Chief Growth Officer at Smart IT, joining us. Tim is a sales and marketing specialist who solves business challenges like an engineer by focusing on data insights, analyzing what works, what doesn't, and what can be improved from a technical and financial perspective. In this podcast, he shares his views on how B2B businesses can create a marketing strategy that drives sales, why marketing and sales should be one department, not two, the value of building a marketing process, and why sales engineering should be your primary strategy. Finding the right talent that has that all-important technical experience is not easy. The more complex the work, the more difficult it is to find seasoned people who can lead teams or execute projects that require specialized knowledge. When leading corporations or even smaller organizations are looking to recruit top talent, they turn to AsiaNet consultants. Since 1988, AsiaNet has been working in partnership with its global clients to help them make the right strategic hires. They have a well-earned reputation for being able to fill even those difficult-to-fill positions. So if you need to recruit new talent or think that you might be doing that soon, head on over to their website. That's AsiaNetConsultants.com, AsiaNetConsultants.com. I'll also leave a link in the show notes. Now let's sit down with Tim and find out how we can look at our digital marketing like an engineer. Tim, it's really a pleasure to have you here on A Seat at the Table, and I want to thank you for taking the time for joining us here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jane. It's a pleasure.
I think that the topic that you talk about is really relevant to our audience here. And I think it's something that, particularly as we're heading into what looks like a challenging year, because 2023 looks like it's throwing us some curveballs, I think it'll become even more important for companies. And one of the biggest challenges for any company, but especially for those in the B2B space, is understanding what it takes to create an effective marketing component for their company. Most see marketing as something that you do only when you need to do it, right? For example, when your sales are not doing well and you're desperate, right, to find new clients. And then as soon as you get sales going again, well, you can stop doing it.
That's usually a mistake.
So yes, please share what you think on that.
Yeah, there's an interesting dynamic generally between sales and marketing in general. Like if you speak to business owners and people who run companies, CEOs and founders, usually they tell you that sales and marketing departments, that they don't really like each other. They argue with each other a lot of times. That's kind of like, I guess, an all-time problem that we just have in the industry for some reason. And everyone is talking about like sales and marketing alignment now for years, but nobody seems to figure like everything out. Or, for example, like in my company, in Smart IT, like the simple solution is that I run both departments. So that's the alignment when you have a single person running everything. Although I understand like for like bigger companies that might not be a possibility, obviously, because I like have a dozen people. When you have hundreds of people, obviously one person cannot manage possibly all of those. The issue with like dropping down marketing, especially coming to 2023, I think like we are in really changing environment for a couple of reasons. First of all, we just recently exited, from my personal experience running all the different campaigns, what it seems like is people are really, really tired of digital engagement, and people actually want to get back from Zoom calls and everything into in-person meeting. So my first like advice would be to hone in on actually schedule an in-person meetings, calls, and actually meeting in person rather than just trying to engage them on LinkedIn or any other sort of platform. Because like everyone was like bombarded by messages, paid advertising over the past couple of years, but they kind of had to respond because there was no other option to find partners and make any sort of like business negotiation other than like digitally on the internet space. Now that like the pandemic is behind us, it seems, and everyone is going back to normal, there's a kind of swing to the pendulum to the other side when people just want to ignore the like digital engagement and just go back to old times. I think it will come back to the middle. Like usually pendulum swings both ways really far, and then it kind of stops in the middle.
As you say, way too much time spent just doing everything virtually. At the same time, it's difficult sometimes to be able to do in person simply because of time and travel costs.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, yeah, of course, you don't want to be spending all your time on Zoom calls or on social media. But at the same time, how can companies implement some kind of a digital component because they do want to reach more people, and travel costs are very high. The time it takes to travel is very high. Is there a way that you feel, based on your experience, that they could be strategically implementing? It may not be Zoom calls. What are you seeing?
I think like the digital component will be like, first of all, the arrangement of the meetings will be done through digital. In terms of like digital advertising of any sort, I think like right now, more than ever, you need to distinguish yourself, because everyone was doing digital advertising for the past 3 years, and everybody kind of get a hang of it, and everybody can do good enough advertisement. But good enough is no longer good enough, because obviously your clients, the leads and potential prospects that you will outreach to, always assume that there is a second guy, your competitor, who pretty much does the same. And you really need to distinguish yourself. How to do it? One of like, I think, going away from like standard outreach formulae, like saying good day, my name is that and that, I'm the chief technology, chief growth, chief marketing officer at that company, I would like to speak, do you have that problem? Like I have like every day 5 or 10 of those emails in my inbox, and I just ignore them because I've seen them all. I don't need to look through the email. So kind of distinguishing yourself from the crowd from the first email is very important. Like the first engagement, you need to pop off, you need to do something drastically different. For example, like just a quick thing that I do, like in my campaign, I usually send a photo of me and my cat and saying, this is me, this is my cat, and we are waiting for your reply.
I love that. I would definitely reply to that email.
That sounds a little bit maybe cheesy and corny, but that's different. That sticks with people. And you don't need to be all the time like professional business suit wearing person to get attention, because that's actually what you need. Like that's the outreach 101. All you need is just to grab their attention and distinguish yourself. Before that, you would distinguish yourself by maybe addressing the problems in the first email, doing some research on the prospect and like doing some personalization. But right now, everyone does personalization. I haven't seen a single email that doesn't include my name and name of my company. So everyone who's talking about personalization, that's not a solution right now. That's a norm. So you need to go even further. So, and I think the marketers need to understand right now that all those talk about digital like automation, personalization is no longer like a key to winning a client. It's just expected of you. And you need to do it even more and go beyond. And I think we'll see like in 2023, we see more new trends coming up. People will stop talking about automation and personalization. Everybody knows about that. Let's talk about something new, something different, how to distinguish yourself from the first email. And like, I think we've been through a couple of those cycles over the years in terms of email outreach, marketing, advertising campaigns on Google Ads, that you go through this cycle that somebody picks up something that is working, something that's unique, then everyone else starts doing it. And we go to another cycle where we need to think of something new. And I think we are at the end of one of those cycles.
I think that's a good point, and you're absolutely right. Everybody wants to do what everybody else is doing, and that dilutes the impact of that particular strategy or tactic. Now, when you're talking about marketing, and I think this is really important, you talk about building a marketing process. I really like that, because anything that you do, you need to do consistently over a period of time in order to be effective, particularly marketing. Marketing is, you'd say it's a marathon, but it's even long. It's almost like a career. And to be able to keep up that diligence on a long haul, you need a system or a process. Otherwise, it's overwhelming. What are you seeing?
Well, first of all, like coming back to sales and everything, when you're talking about marketing process, I think it's inseparable from sales process. You need to understand how your sales cycle works, what your salespeople are doing, how they engage with the customers after the first like touch point with marketing material, and like how you do the lead acquisition really depends. So you, like as I was saying, people need to stop treating marketing and sales as two different entities and rather look at them as one coherent entity that needs to work like a clockwork together. One of the things, like first of all, obviously things like using a CRM, keeping track of everything, using like automation tools to schedule everything. I am a big proponent of using like a data-driven approach. I only determine what works and what's not based on numbers. And this kind of like my background academically is engineering. So for me, like numbers is pretty easy. And I think like if you want to be a good marketer nowadays, you should be good with numbers. You should be really good at analytics and understanding what lies beyond those numbers. Many people don't see like the forest for the trees, unfortunately. Always be experimenting, always doing like A/B campaigns. Right. Don't just like create one like template of email or messaging or landing page and say, okay, we have this engagement and that's good enough. Create 5 variants and determine which works better and try to just reiterate until you reach the point where it's like you have no longer an ability to improve yourself. And this comes with like to structuring your team is also important. So because like usually like when you talk about marketing, there's several components. So you have like targeting and data mining. You have people who need to be involved knowing like what kind of like leads you're targeting, who's your ideal customer persona. They need to like know it by heart. Like if you wake them up in the middle of the night and say like state our three customer personas, they should just be able to do that. In the middle of the night. Then you have other people who actually do the targeting, who can schedule the calls. Then you have a content department, which is very like important nowadays. Again, that comes back to distinguishing. Everyone kind of knows how to write decent enough landing page and do a decent enough design for anything. Again, as I was saying, no longer good enough. You need to distinguish yourself and really hone in on what you offer. And I see right nowadays that going straight to the point works best. Like straight to the point and capturing attention works best. So in terms of like, building a process, it's never easy to establish a working process that can be maintained long term. And you usually will go through different iterations, but getting like this initial structure, making sure that you have the right people, because it comes down to, I think, your team and how you structure your team. Structuring the team, structuring the process, making sure that your sales and marketing departments are in full alignment, having like meetings done together, like weekly, bi-weekly, whatever you do at your company is very important. Just, keeping communication flow all the time open between those departments.
I think that's a really good point. And the fact that you're linking sales and marketing together as opposed to separate departments is important, because people oftentimes, of course, they look at sales, and sales actually drives revenue very directly. It's very measurable. It's very easy to see what's coming from sales, and even in most cases, what person is actually most effective and what person may be least effective. So companies, and me too, you like that, right?
It's transparent. For business, it's really transparent. It's easy to see like what works, what doesn't, like who delivers the result in terms of sales department. Yeah, that's great. Marketing, you still have numbers. It's just like, I think that they're not that directly related to revenue and costs, but there's still like analytics you can do. And I think it's just like 1 or 2 degrees of separation to your direct revenue stream. And you just kind of need to do a little bit of work to understand how your investment in marketing affects everything. Because like you need to remember that when we're talking about the funnel, like traditionally, like if you Google like sales funnel or anything, you'll see the same picture. But at the end, like at the very top, it says like cold prospects. Who generate those cold prospects? That's generated by marketing team usually. And so you cannot just ignore it. And utilizing marketing along the sales funnel is also very important. I think like because any person who worked like at least like a year in sales knows that usually the biggest problem is to not actually like schedule the first call. It's not about closing the deal. It's about like the process in between those, because very often you think that everything is going well, you've chatted with the customer, they show the interest, but then they just start ignoring you and like nothing comes out of it. That's where like you can also utilize same marketing employees, like simply like utilizing something like case studies, reminding of yourself constantly, and again grabbing their attention again and again can be very useful.
We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that if marketing is sort of, you might say, the black hole of sales, right? Where, as you're saying, sales is very transparent, marketing is very opaque. But I guess what also frustrates people is that sales can be very immediate. Not always, but you can get a result fast, right? Particularly someone who's a seasoned salesperson in some cases can get that result fast. Whereas marketing, even for a seasoned marketer, there's a very long lag time in the beginning, right? To get that flywheel going, you really have to be able to, it's like going, I like to compare it to going to the gym, where how long you have to go before you actually start to see improvement. And I think that's one of the frustrations that people have. They're like, oh, we keep spending money on this. We're not seeing anything. We're getting data, but you need a lot of data over a long period of time.
And one more thing that I would like to add is there's sometimes misdistribution to everything. So for example, as you said, sales is very transparent in everything. And like, for example, you can deliver results very fast, or not very fast, like, but you see like you have a typical sales cycle, as we call it, like, and you say whatever it's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, half a year. Usually what happens, like, the marketing can actually affect the length of this sales cycle. That's something people don't usually see, is that with marketing, you can shorten it. And very often what happens, if you cut down on the cost of marketing, then your sales cycles tend to prolong in time. Very often. That's what I saw again and again in many B2B companies. Like you turn off the marketing and then the salespeople start underperforming.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I think that people don't understand that in some respects, because you don't see that direct link between marketing and sales. So therefore you think, well, I've been doing this marketing. I don't know what I'm getting out of it. I have my salespeople calling people. They're getting orders. And so you turn off the faucet, right, for marketing. And then you don't see that a couple of months later, the sales also start to slow down. But because there was that lag between, there's just so many lags between when you start it, when you turn it off, that you don't see the correlation unless you really have expertise in that area.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And one of the things that are very like annoying is that this lag, it's not like a 1 week or 2 week. It can take months and months. So sometimes you can like literally cut down not only like on the marketing cost, but actually lay off some people. And then after several months, your sales go down, and like you've done not irreversible, but pretty much already irreversible damage to your company revenue stream. And you need to reassemble the entire marketing because you actually didn't see the value in it. And I understand that. Unfortunately, that's, I think, a mistake on many marketers, is that sometimes like we are not very good at actually illustrating very clearly through numbers the value that we bring. And I think, again, it comes back to the disconnect between sales and marketing, like, because there's no that link between, so like you can never actually illustrate the value of what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. I think it's very, very hard with marketing, even when you have all that data available to you, to really quantify what you're getting in a way that people outside the marketing department can really see the value in that. You always feel like you haven't made your case as fully as you would like to, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's, again, like coming back, I think that if you're planning to be a marketer, because like I always see the problem, like at least nowadays when hiring new people, especially young junior marketers, is that there's some sort of like glamorous idea of working in marketing and advertising. People think that it's quite a glamorous job, like, oh, I'm working advertising and marketing. Actually, it's not. It's like a lot of work with numbers. You need to be a very like math savvy person who can be quick on their feet, do the analytics and everything. And there's not a lot of glamour, to be honest. It's very like, especially junior like tasks that you do like in SEO, in paid advertisement, in social media. Those are very repetitive. I very much like try to get people who have at least 1 year of experience in marketing field, and it doesn't matter which like field of expertise they have, whether it's like SEO, paid advertising, social media. I just want a person who understands a little bit what they're getting into. Because if they have no experience in marketing, you're in for a trip. Because like after a month or two, like they would say, that's not what I expected. I thought it's going to be a fun job, for creative people. There is a room for creativity in marketing, obviously, but there's also like a job needs to be done.
Absolutely. I think you're right. I think people don't realize how much math science there is in marketing these days. It's not, as you say,
and just repetitive tasks.
Yeah. Now, you talk about sales engineering as a primary strategy. How does that work? Can you explain that?
Yeah, it's like the idea of sales engineering is like, yeah, I think it's just like a fancy phrase to use again to grab attention and to kind of call it. It's the idea of understanding what actually drives any sort of like sales, because you can read 100 books and people saying like this drives sales, this drives sales. I think at the end of the day, people like on the other end, customers, they worry only about a couple of things. This can be broken down like any business cares about 3 metrics. It's revenue, and can you answer the question? Can you increase my revenue? Then it's cost. Can you decrease my cost? And risk. Can you help me mitigate risks? And that's it. If you can answer those questions during your sales presentation and convince the person next to you that you can do 1, 2, or 3 of all those things, then they'll buy. If you're just talking about your product, how you are great and everything, it's a trap that many young salespeople fall into. They start talking about themselves and their product, forgetting about that, like people next to you don't really care about it. Steve Jobs did really good thing with Apple when he came back, is that he completely restructured the marketing messages around his product, an iPhone. It wasn't like the most powerful and sophisticated smartphone in existence. No, he just said like in his marketing campaigns, creative people choose iPhone. And that's it. And because every person like to think of them as creative person, that's for them. That's it. You need to address like the customer value, address the customer issue, and understand that at the end of the day, we all care only about like our business and ourselves. And that's what you kind of need to structure everything around it. So I would just like to any person, just break down revenue, cost, risk. What does your product solve? Can you increase their revenue? Can you decrease their cost? Can you help them mitigate risks? And hone in on that. And if you can put it into metrics, that's where like engineering and analytics come through. And even better, you can give your case studies, how you like in terms of like marketing, obviously, it's about generating more revenue. Or if you're like a new person, for example, applying for a job, even you're trying to sell yourself, that's another great example for anyone who going for the interview. Hone in on numbers. Have you cut down the cost of marketing for the previous company you've been to without like affecting the revenue. Well, that's a great, like, if you would come to a job interview and say like, yeah, in my previous job, I cut down on like 20% of marketing expenditure without like affecting any negatively the effectiveness of the campaign itself. Now that's a great metric. That's a person I'd like to hire. Yes. Same with choosing your partner, same for choosing a vendor for marketing and sales. Can you hone down on those three issues? And can you provide proof of concept? That's pretty much what I mean by sales engineering. And obviously it's about structuring your message. Usually there's a lot of psychology going into sales. I always tell like doing sales is like dating a lot. There's a lot of similarities between that, how you engage on first date, how you make a first impression, how you talk. Usually I say to young salespeople is that the first call with the prospect ever, you should be listening and not talking at all, trying to get as much information as you want, because the last thing that a potential customer want to see is like a self-involved salesperson who talks about themselves and their company, because they don't care. They want to be listened, and they want you, and it comes down to trust, obviously. They want to trust you, and there's no better way to establish a trust than listening to people's problem.
I think those are really good points, and you're absolutely right. It really takes a lot to understand marketing, particularly nowadays, that it would probably pay for companies to understand how marketing works before they get involved in even hiring people or trying to build a department. I don't want to try to put you on the spot, but in general, what might be timelines that people would be looking at if somebody is looking to launch a marketing campaign, and let's say they really haven't done anything on a consistent basis before? What would you be looking at in terms of going from launching that campaign to starting to see some kind of results, i.e. sale, obviously an improvement in sales? What might you look at in terms of a timeline?
Yeah, obviously that will depend and vary on the industry you work in. Some industries just by their nature are slower to respond. Like the market is a little bit slower. For example, like you may think of healthcare. It's very slow to respond and do like much anything. Or insurance, financial sector is like very slow usually, unless we are in a time of turmoil. But in terms of like the timeline that you should be expecting, I think that going for 3 to 6 months to see any sort of improvement, like months 1 to 3, I don't think that you can see any sort of like meaningful changes that you wouldn't attribute to potentially random error. But yeah, 3 to 6 months, I think, is like the timeline you're looking at to see any meaningful changes.
Okay. I think 3 to 6 months is pretty fast. I think that's really not too bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Obviously, like as I said, you need to also understand. Obviously, it will also depend on like how much you've invested, like upfront into marketing. Like if you're just investing in, for example, like outreach campaigns and seeing like acquiring users, like I think there you can see some sort of like improvements in 3 to 6 months. SEO obviously takes a bit more time to get real results, but it has a snowball effect that it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as times go along. Paid advertisement like Google Ads can bring pretty much an immediate result, but it takes a high upfront cost. So it's also like a cost-benefit analysis. The more money you can put in upfront, the faster usually you'll see the result. The less money you put, longer time you need to wait. But that's like any business.
Yes, of course. Well, Tim, thank you so much for sharing so many interesting insights. I think that everybody is trying to understand marketing better. People are feeling pressured to do something, but not sure what to do and not sure what's going to give them a return on investment. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Now, how can people find you? Where can people get in touch with you?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if you will share my social somewhere, but if you want to contact me directly, like I think LinkedIn would be the best way to engage.
Perfect. Well, I'll include all of those links in the show notes. And again, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to join us here on A Seat at the Table.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
I'd also like to thank our sponsor, AsiaNet Consultants. AsiaNet's a specialist in recruiting top talent in Asian markets. Since 1988, AsiaNet has been working in partnership with its global clients to help them make the right strategic hires. They have a well-earned reputation for being able to fill even those difficult-to-fill positions. Learn about how they can help you find the best talent by heading over to their website, asianetconsultants.com. That's asianetconsultants.com. I'll also leave a link in the show notes. Thank you for joining me here on A Seat at the Table. If you enjoyed this episode or learned something from it, I would love to hear about it. If you'd like to support the show, please hit the subscribe button. And if you can take a minute to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or other channels, that would be fabulous. Don't forget to check out our podcast website, seatpodcast.com. That's SEAT podcast.com. If there's something you'd like to share, ideas, suggestions, or comments, please feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining me and being part of our international community. I'm Jane Singer, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode.